right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today, Doing More with Less, a Smarter Approach to Bank Physical Security Operations. Today, joining me are our industry experts in physical security and specific to banking security installs. So joining me here is John Valdez. He has over 20 years experience in our industry, and he's the senior account executive for Central Texas at DAC. And alongside him here is his colleague, Kent Howell. He's also joining us, and he is the director of security business development over at DAC. And before I kind of continue around the table with introductions, I think there may be some people on the call that might not be as familiar with DAC. Kent, can I put you on the spot to give us just a brief summary of who DAC is so our audience knows?
Sure. Nice to meet all of you. DAC is a technology integrator headquartered out of Houston, Texas. We do have several other branches across Texas and service the whole state.
Great, perfect. All right, well, I'll just keep going around the table here. I'm also pleased to introduce my team over at ICT. My name is Nikki Williams. I am the North American Regional Marketing Manager for ICT. And alongside with me today are our regional managers for Texas, Travis Chafin and Alex Sani. And they have amazing experience in the physical security space. But kind of a fun call out for today is actually after speaking with them, they have over 50 bank security installations between the two of them. So, some great out in the field stories to tell later. Thank you guys for joining us. And who is ICT? Just a quick overview. We build the hardware and software our security integrators like DAC need to help tailor a security solution in, for example, today in banking. And we're a unified solution in access control, intrusion, and building automation, just all under one pane of glass. So, with those basic introductions, let's jump right in. We've got a pretty tight window for the webinar today and a lot of ground to cover. So, put you guys on the spot. Let's kick things off by talking about some overarching industry trends and what we're seeing right now and how this impacts our audience on the call today. So, Travis, when you talk to your integrators about their banking customers today, so their bank managers, their directors of security, what is keeping them up at night from a security or operational standpoint?
Well, sure. Well, truth be told, it's really not any of the dramatic stuff. It's not about bank robberies or anything else trying to do that. It's more of making sure that the everyday business is being handled. So one of the major issues is fragmentation, having just too many systems. A lot of banks grow through acquisitions, so there could be a hodgepodge of different systems throughout multiple locations. Each one of them is different to use, different to manage, may or may not have the same features.
Mm,
And then also, and I think it kind of ties into what we're talking about here, it's about being able to do more with less people and having something that is more fragmented just creates more work and it takes away from the ability just to focus on what is really important. And now we're dealing with small issues. Another component that's obviously very important to anybody in the financial space is compliance and audits. They need to make sure that if the examiners come in and they can be able to produce whatever that they need to on demand right then and there. In addition to that, cyber security and physical convergence, meaning, are things going to come in? They need to make sure that the platform is hardened and encrypted and abilities to, have all the technology locked down the way that they need to be in compliance. And then I think that the last one is about scale and change management. And so again, this is a kind of a quiet one. It is
mm,
about how long it takes to onboard or offboard people with credentials, keeping their ability and their sites live, and being able to quickly fold in a acquired branch.
okay. that makes sense. And then, Kent, John, does that kind of align with what you're seeing in the industry right now, or are there other kind of pressure points, people, process, compliance? What are you seeing as kind of those pain points right now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would add into what Travis is talking about as far as like a kind of key word or focus word is standardization. And I think how do you achieve doing more with less? How do you become
Yeah.
compliant? How do you maintain or bring people on quicker or branches on quicker? And it's really standardizing the product that you're using. And when Travis was talking through that, it's just really about when you have so many different options. There's a huge benefit to standardizing
Mm,
on a platform or product a solution so that you can make it scalable. So I think, what a lot of the buzzword that I've heard a lot is really moving towards a standardization of
mm,
product and platform.
okay. Yeah. And do you feel this has been ongoing, or is this something new in the last 5 years? Um, fundamentally, has this been the same for a long time, or are these kind of newer challenges that are arising right now?
I think it's just like anything else. It there was a time where people's coffee tables in their house had, five or six different remotes sitting there, and they all controlled something else, and maybe everything worked as it should, but it was, complicated to troubleshoot when there was an issue because you got to go check this and check that. And so I think as technologies have developed in the security industry, you're seeing some of that, similar type of situation now where people have these systems that, maybe all work, but they don't talk to each other. And so the
Yeah.
back end troubleshooting aspect is a big time waster.
Yeah, I love that example. Gosh, can we all just resonate with all those changers? I do remember that. All right. Well, we all talked about it already, kind of through introductions of what's going on in the industry, but it is primarily the focus of this webinar, doing more with less, leaner teams right now. So Alex, what does doing more with less look like today in banking, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think doing more with less is starting to become a trend, not just in banking, but in every other industry. You hear
Yeah,
a lot of, my teams are getting spread thin. We're doing a lot more with outside our job jurisdiction, and we're having to kind of scramble. And so if you're having a system that's fragmented or, just not keeping up with what you're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis, it can pull you away from the stuff that's actually needed, that you've been expanding on. So I think
yeah,
doing more with less really speaks to finding a solution that can move towards your progression, right? So as you get more responsibilities, as you expand your job title or expand, as Travis mentioned, acquisitions or buildings, expanding your branch, you want to be with a solution that will move with you. So I think that is a huge aspect of what we're seeing is, as you expand, as you grow, you need something that's going to grow with you, be scalable.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And then with this doing more with less, I guess, John, what do you think are kind of some tasks that are consuming time that really just shouldn't require human attention anymore? Maybe some extra busy work in
Yeah, I mean, I
general.
think there's so much. It's interesting because as Alex was talking, I think, it's also a drive towards being more effective with less. And so I
Mm,
think that's the big part of it. And so, I think to Kent's point earlier about the remotes, I think in the past, sure, when there were some operational jobs that we'd have to do, say someone changes branches, so their access to certain locations will come and go. Those operational tasks sometimes require someone to actually go in, physically remove and add
sure.
and go through that process. And so with, standardizing a platform and integrating it with some of your other platforms and having that cohesiveness, what makes those transitions a little bit easier.
Mm,
Also, like if we think about in the past, like now using access control, everything's controlled through your access card or key fob, let's say that. Whereas in the past, there was some manual stuff where you'd have to rekey a door or something to that effect, right? So
Mm.
I think it's the added component of, look, it's great with technology, we have access to so much more, but that also means we have access to so much more. So it infinitely grows even more at that point. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, this kind of transitions us over to some of the scalability that Travis was bringing up as well. So, yes, we have lean teams, but that doesn't mean we stop growing. That doesn't mean there's not additional branches. So, kind of continuing along the line of maybe multi-branch visibility as a conversation in the industry right now and the importance of connected systems. So, if you're responsible for security across, say, dozens or even hundreds of branches, depending on the bank, what makes that job particularly challenging today?
I think geography can be a huge part of it. We work with a bank locally. They have a total of 40 branches, but we're also in South Texas. And if you go from furthest north to say furthest south, you're talking hundreds of miles.
Oh,
And
so
so
the
the
actual,
response
yeah,
time,
travel.
yeah, geography wise and response time that is significant, So it's that, it can be as simple as just geography also based on where you're at.
Mhm. Now, having that visibility to multiple branches as well, does that play into like an overarching security reliability, being able to see each branch remotely?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it plays into that massively.
Mm.
Having visibility into anything that goes wrong or anything that you need to be aware of in terms of compliance or just overall security in general. You need to make sure that if your branch is functioning properly, you want to be able to see it. And if it's not, you have to have immediate eyes on it. But
Yeah.
it also goes into just basic functionalities. If uh, there's new onboarded class of people, for example, new tellers, new
Mm.
general manager. I've heard some experiences where they've had to go to each location that they need access to and badge in their card readers or manually sign them into a system
Oh gosh,
at
yeah.
that direct location, which goes to John's point of just hundreds of miles, not just Texas
Yeah.
alone, but it could be across the nation. So having that central visibility, having that central location where you can have
Mm.
basic functionality is a huge aspect.
Yeah. So I'm hearing everybody uses the term time is money. So I'm seeing like the
Mhm.
cost of time, the cost of an overarching security, and then overall just kind of preventing that all the costs kind of always associated with silos. So talk to me about the cost of siloed systems. Where do we start to maybe lose some of that money, that cost savings when we're keeping things so separate from one another?
Well, I think one example could be health monitoring of your equipment. Um,
Mm.
a lot of, technologies now have the capability to where, they know all of the parts and pieces that are installed in your system and can tell you, hey, these cameras, these, card readers, their average lifespan is 5 years.
Mm.
And so that way, like how to budget around that for future, upgrades and things like that. I think being able to provide some insights by having a unified platform into how you are going to spend money in the future
Sure.
is pretty important because no one likes to, be like, oh man, like my cameras, they're bad. We got to work this into the budget next year. How are we going to do this? We don't, whatever.
Sure.
But if you can plan ahead for that,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
predictable,
tons of
predictable.
savings. Right.
Yeah, predictable economics of it all. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. All right, guys. Well, I would actually love to hear some in the field stories. So, shifting gears a little bit away from all of these trends, pain points, everything we're seeing, that there's obviously need. Do either of you have maybe a unique case study you can share with us? And you, of course, don't have to share the bank's name. Of course, confidentiality is paramount, but I would love to hear about maybe a bank that had an interesting problem or need that you solved.
Well, yeah, I can go ahead and take that first. So there was a bank that we've recently done with one of our in Central Texas that basically has taken over. They have decided to go with ICT. The first one that they focused on was their flagship location in Waco. And one of the things that they added, which they believed was really a great add-on, was the ability to have wireless pendants for duress. And one of the
Sure.
things that ICT does, in addition to just being the access control system, is it also integrates and is the intrusion system as well. So not only for just the regular alarm portion whenever a place is closed, but also in terms of being able to be there as the duress system as well. But what's great about having those two things together is that one button can be programmed to do X amount of things.
Oh,
Call
okay,
the
very cool.
central station, lock down certain doors, unlock other doors if there's a need for that, unlock maybe a cash drawer, but then also to be able to send out signals to the main branch or to any other recipient of those messages. And that can all be done instantly without having to worry about it being bogged down talking to different systems.
Okay, okay. And so then overarching, like the larger picture of this bank installation. So there was access control, intrusion with the duress pendants, and any other features or functionality?
Well, it also cameras. So we
Okay,
have
great.
it's not our system, but we have several VMSs that we integrate with. That way, whenever there is an event, they're immediately able to check and see that video without having to go back and forth between two different systems.
Okay, absolutely. That makes sense. And then they did their flagship location. And is that with discussion of scalability, growth, change in the
Oh, yes,
future?
yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that first one, even though it was a single location, the vetting process there was about every single location going forward. So it was to
Okay.
make sure this is the first one that we put in. That's where the server was going to reside because they had the ability to host it there. But then on top of that, now the plan and what we've been doing is just going from location to location, adding and taking away the older systems, or in some of these locations, they're brand new. So we're putting in
Okay.
a new one from scratch.
So it sounds like they were due for some updates and then they had some more interesting kind of requests or add-ons with the different functionality of the pendants.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, that's great though. Do you feel like you solved their problem by the end of the day?
Oh yeah, we were able to go out there, have the conversation, answered all the questions that they wanted in terms of being able to. And actually, I was going to kind of have this conversation maybe later whenever you'd ask for something. But one
Yeah.
of the things that I think is good, not just for us, but for anybody out there who is trying to get a system like this, the biggest issue when an end user is trying to talk to a security professional is that they want, and of course they want, to be able to speak the language. They want to use the vocabulary for this industry. The
Okay.
problem is that a lot of times things can get lost whenever we're so rigid. And so
Mm,
what's best, in my opinion, is if you're looking for a project, it's to ask about the results, about this is what I want to happen, and then allow the professionals that you've brought in to be able to make it work the way you want. Because there are times whenever someone will say, for example, oh, I want it to be in the cloud. And you find
mm.
out, well, they didn't really want it in the cloud. They just wanted the ability to remotely access it.
Oh,
Some of those
interesting.
vocabulary
Okay.
words just don't translate perfectly. So
Okay.
instead, it's better just to come in and say, when I hit a button, I want this to happen. Can you make it happen?
I like that. Okay, so start from the end goal and work backwards. Kent, John, do you approach these installs in a similar way, or can you tell me a story of maybe a challenge or a problem you solved for a bank?
Sure. I think similarly to what Travis was talking about, we were working with a bank and their central headquarters, which was a multi-level building. I think it was in total about 10 floors.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the initial thought process was in their on-premises command center, they wanted to be able to have access to a button that would do one of two things, or two different buttons, I should say. One that was a full building lockdown. The other one was
Mm,
first floor lockdown. Both provide a sense of security and ability for them to approach things a certain way. But in those instances, also, if you're going into a lockdown mode, you may need to be utilizing law enforcement or first responders. And so then the question really kind of comes, if you go into a lockdown mode, what is the process of getting your first responders access?
Okay.
So really, it's trying to have a full-fledged conversation about all the different possibilities in each scenario. And so I think at that point, it's really asking through and understanding what they're looking for, the reason behind it, and just making sure you approach it. So it's, kind of what's the overarching full, and then once you've identified that, what kind of snares could you potentially come across when you have something like
Oh,
that?
I
And
like
so
that. Yeah,
that's
try to
that's
predict
really the
that.
big part of it. Now, in the particular one we were working with is again because just from an imagination standpoint, if you're going into a full lockdown or first floor lockdown, it's for a reason. And so
Yes.
then, like I said, it's, how do you, you're still going to need to provide access and typically to a first responder. So it's working through a viable option for them
Okay.
that, gives first responders access when in that particular situation. So.
Okay, that makes sense. And for the overarching project, I mean, obviously intrusion, access control, were there multiple doors? How large was the branch?
Yeah, so again, this was for their HQ. On the first floor, there were, I would say, four entry points, three
Okay.
customer-related entry points, and then one employee specific. And so, it was just a matter of making sure you address all of those. And then also, the question becomes with that many entry points, and then again, based on first responder and talking through it, how are you going to provide that access to be at each door? Do you want it to just be at the one
Yeah.
door? Like
Okay.
what is the communication process a part of
Yeah.
that? So
And I would assume also like a camera integration, visibility throughout.
yeah, absolutely. Camera integration, you can start to filter in, what some people would refer to as mass notification.
Mm,
And so just any aspects, intrusion, mass notification, access control. So all of that video is gonna filter into that. So
yeah, it all comes together in one place, right?
mhm.
That's great. That's a great story. Alex, Kent, do either of you perhaps have a story where we've talked about the access control intrusion? Is there any stories you can share that had any unique functionality or maybe even some building automation involved in the install in addition?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Oh, go
Go
for it,
ahead.
Kim.
All right. Yeah, so I worked with an organization who was headquartered out of Dallas, and they had a handful of locations in the DFW Metroplex, and wanted to expand across the entire state of Texas. And
Oh,
so
wow.
a lot of their buildings had different systems and things like that. And it was real easy for their IT team, who was responsible for those, to bounce around town and things like that to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on and all that good stuff. And, they were real nervous about, deploying additional locations across the state, because a drive to San Antonio or Houston or
Yeah,
anywhere else is
again, it's
a lot of
large.
time
Yeah.
for them, and they didn't really have the funding to staff additional people dedicated to trying to solve those problems
Mm,
on site.
okay.
And so we really looked at platforms that could tie in all of their systems across all of their locations and give them one pane of glass to feel in control of
Mm,
things. And there's all sorts of other integrations that go into that. So the main ones that we were talking about: intrusion, access control, and cameras. Those are the big three that pretty much
yeah.
all of them have. But their banks are more boutiquey. And so
Oh,
they have a
interesting.
lot of high net worth individuals that they come in for important meetings and things like that. They have a full bar and all of that. And so they really wanted to tie in their audio video kind of piece of it too. And so through some thoughtful design, we can make it to where um, all the displays that are in the building can auto populate camera feeds and things of that nature, and or
Very
whatever
cool.
else there. And if that's not important to you, then You don't have to do it, obviously, but there's tons of different things that can tie into it. So I think, like you were talking about before, of starting from what the end goal is. What would be really nice to have and work backwards. That's going to give the integrator that you're working with a lot of information, and then their wheels will
Mm,
start turning
I
and saying
like
like,
that.
okay, like here's a lot of things that we can do, and then you can start to narrow it down from there. And that's what we had to do on that project. Got very creative and tied
Yeah.
in as many things as possible. Conference room shades that tie in, based on
Oh,
different
wow,
things.
really? Huh.
Air conditioners, HVAC stuff that automatically goes to certain room temperatures, when a meeting is scheduled, those types of things. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. And so typically, good integrators will be able to handle a lot of those scopes. But if you're only asking about, access control and cameras, they might not realize that you're actually looking for a full
Yeah,
blown, automation type solution as well. And so
sure.
it never hurts to ask.
Yeah,
If
ask
not,
the
they
questions.
probably have a good partner that can help out as well.
Yeah, I really like that. And a truly exceptional security integrator can tailor to your needs and help you identify based on your goals, kind of all the options and opportunity there. So that makes a lot of sense. So kind of reflecting back to this job, Kent, after everything was done, do you feel that you impacted not only or solved their problem, not only solved their problem, but impacted their overall efficiency?
I would say so. I used to be out in the field physically working at these branches,
Yeah.
a lot of the times helping with troubleshooting and
So
design and
you know
things like that.
firsthand. Yeah.
And so I was out there. I've been to every location that they have, and so I got to know their IT team really well, who was also involved in traveling around just to check in on things and see the progress. And we had an ongoing service maintenance agreement with them to where we would proactively troubleshoot and things like that when
Sure.
an issue would come up. And so about a year after the majority of all projects had been completed, I was on a call with their IT team, and they were like, man, we're kind of sad. We don't ever get to see you anymore. And I'm like, I know, y'all just stay in your office at all times. I mean, they sit up in their headquarters in
Everything's
Dallas. They
working.
they almost never have to go to a branch. And they do. They can call us if someone actually needs to go out there because they know that a camera's down or whatever's
Oh,
going on.
that's
And so
great. It's a good problem
I
to
think
have.
that alone saved them, airfare, mileage per diem, all the costs associated with bouncing between branches.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I like that. That's a good problem. All right. Well, Alex, I want to hear a story from you. Tell me a story about a banking install. Anything that pops out to you as maybe a more interesting request or problem you solved. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think kind of Kent talked about this a little bit is, ask the weird questions. Ask,
I
certain
like that.
scenarios that you want to happen. So question is ask, what is a weird situation that you want a system to do that you've experienced before,
I
and it
like
wasn't
it.
able to do that. So from there, they wanted their system to, they wanted to take a proactive approach instead of a reactive.
Okay.
So when an issue happened, they wanted it to conduct a series of sequences in order to better protect their customers, the money, everything. So what they wanted was, and we were able to kind of dissect and figure out what exactly would be a good plan, which goes into the story of they wanted something that was able to react to, worst possible case scenario, which would be
Okay. Yeah.
bank robbery or someone trying to, steal money. So what we're able to figure out was have two card reader or two cards each teller has, and from there, one is their general bank teller. If someone's trying to withdraw money, they are able to swipe that card and they're able to access the drawer. However, the other one was for emergency situations,
Okay.
and with that specific card that each teller had, if there was ever, God forbid, that situation were to come about. They were able to use that card to swipe into a certain with that same reader, but it draws to a certain box, which has the low denomination dollars, the ink pads, and from that single swipe, you conduct
Interesting.
a
Okay.
sequence
Very
of
cool.
events that will turn all the LEDs a certain color. So each one of the GMs or branch managers knows, okay, something's going on at this particular location because
Mm.
the LEDs are a certain color based on our protocol. And from there, it'll also lock all the doors from the exterior so no one else can get in, and it'll automatically ping the duress signal.
Hmm.
So that way they know something's going on because someone used that badge. So again, one of those weird situations where I always instruct people, ask the weird questions, see what
Yeah,
scenarios you want to play out, because at the end of the day, if you don't ask, we might not know of a certain situation, but we will be able to help. Um, so ask those weird questions, ask those weird situations that you
I
want to
love
be able
that.
to do, and we can find a solution.
Yeah, sky's the limit. And with the right security integrator, you can truly tailor your system needs. So
Mhm.
this is actually a great transition. Thank you for that story, Alex. That is unique. I like that. Um, this is a great transition into kind of leaving our audience here, our security decision makers, with some good questions to ask, right? So, when you are starting to spec a system, a solution, solve a problem, what questions should they challenge security integrators with? And I like Alex's of, ask anything, like get creative, get crazy, at least ask the question, right? But John, Travis, Kent, what are other questions they should ask so they get the right person for the job?
Well, I'm going to tell you this is actually a very boring answer, but we're
Oh,
talking about we're talking about technology. We're talking about uh, things that come and go. So, for
yeah.
example, I used to work for a company. We sold a product called Verax, great product, but it's end of life, and there are still places that are using that. In fact,
Mm,
about a year and a half ago, we replaced a large bank in Texas with that had a current Verax system. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it was working. The problem is that if something did go down, there's nothing that you can do other than try to buy something on eBay and hope that it works.
oh, goodness.
So as part of, in my opinion, as part of an annual security audit, that needs to be a question. Is this product still available? Is it,
Sure.
even though the brand name may still be available, is this particular model still available if I needed a replacement? Those are things that I think should be at top of mind because it
Yeah.
changes the project from being an emergency into something that just can be planned and done at any time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that also leans into some of our previous conversation about preparing for growth and change. And John or Kent, what are questions you think we could ask integrators to basically make sure that any decisions made are preparing a bank for future growth?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
think
one of
maybe,
the
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I was going to just say quickly, a good question to ask is, ask yourself if you're the bank, you know, could we could we absorb, five new branches tomorrow if we had to, or if we found out tomorrow that, we're merging or
Yeah.
acquiring new locations, like, can we do that? I mean, are we capable of that? Is our system set up to do that?
Yes.
And so just always be thinking from, long term, if we're going to continue to grow, we need something that'll grow with us.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, John, are there any mistakes banks make when it comes to planning for scalability?
I think probably one of the biggest mistakes is just addressing the single issue at hand. And so while I
Mm,
understand, there's an immediate need for resolution, only focusing on that immediate need or that particular resolution is going to trip you up because if the issue or came up today, there's a good chance it could come up tomorrow or 2 months from now or a year from now. So I think that's the biggest thing is being myopically or singularly focused on one issue and not taking into
ah,
consideration, what other potential issues or the word I used earlier, snares are out there
I
that can
like
trip
that.
you up. So,
Yeah, you got to think the bigger picture long term. It is hard though when you have one very painful problem to solve front of mind, I'm sure.
mhm.
Well,
I
what
mean,
about,
the
oh, go
simple
ahead.
one that I would just say briefly is like, my wife and I just bought our house about 2 years ago, and a couple of weeks ago, one of my fire alarms started chirping.
Uh-oh.
And so, of course, I got up there and changed the battery so it stopped chirping. And then I thought to myself, all of these smoke detectors are the same age, right? They all have the
Right.
batteries for the same amount of times. Let me just switch them all out now. And so it's just, like I said, if I could have just focused on that one, but more than likely, a couple of nights later, another smoke detector is going to be chirping, and then I'm going to have to
Yeah.
wake up
Oh,
and take care of that. So,
that's a great example. You can tell what industry you're in. That's great. Well, talk to me about questions folks can ask surrounding complexity. We talked about the cost associated with fragmentation, but are there any specific questions that might kind of safeguard folks as they design their system or hire the right people to kind of prevent unnecessary complexity?
I think a lot of times people look at whether you want to call it safety and security as a singular division or singular type of solution. But as I found as the years have gone on, when you're talking security, you're having to incorporate your IT team because there's an
Yeah.
IT component. We've talked access control, badge access. There is a
Mm,
human resources component to that. So I think the big thing is to stop, and when you think about your solution or how you're trying to approach it, start thinking about what all different departments are also involved in that, and understand it's
oh,
not
I
just
like
your
that.
security team, but it could involve IT, human resources,
Mm,
whatever it may be from there. So,
I like that. Again, the bigger picture, right?
yes.
Yeah. Well, how about in general? I'll kind of just throw out the general question. Is there any questions that bubble up for you that folks should be asking? Just don't forget to ask this one question. Anything come up for you guys? I mean, we covered a lot of bases, so I put it on the spot.
Well, one of them is there are, depending on your individual needs, there are compliance issues that you need to make sure that whoever you're working with can set up for you correctly. But then there are also uh, possible protocols that you are doing outside of that, just on a
Mm,
opening and closing protocols that you use every single day that you need to make sure that the system that you're going to be going with can comply with.
okay. Okay, that makes sense.
I think another question could be too, and this is on the manufacturer and integrator side, is if an issue does come up, am I going to be able to fix that problem in a timely manner?
Mm,
You can't have a system that doesn't work or is having constant problems, and then you have a delay time of 1 to 2 weeks. You need a timely
yeah.
response to get that back up and running. So, whoever you deal with, make sure you're doing the due diligence and ask the questions. Am I going to be able to have a solution in a timely manner so I do not have that downtime? Whether that's on the manufacturer side and having a solution in place for that, like remote access, or having an integrator close by for any service calls or anything like that.
Yeah, future
You need to make sure
planning.
that, yeah, exactly. You need to make sure that you have those questions asked so that way you can better properly assess. Again, God forbid anything were to go down, you want to make sure you get it fixed properly and in a timely manner.
I like that. Yeah. Well, guys, I think this is a lot of great advice, a lot of food for thought, and given our audience some tools here to use for future security system planning. So we're coming up on time here. Do any of you have any remaining thoughts you want to share before we head out? I really appreciate your time and your stories today.
Yeah, one thing that we haven't really touched on, but in most business conversations today, AI is
Yeah.
discussed. And so you're probably thinking, well, what kind of AI do I need for my security and those types of questions, which are all good, but really the conversation that you need to be having now is, how is the company investing in AI? Because they're probably have creating budgets for what their internal platforms and things like that are going to look like in the future. But the security piece of that needs to be included in that AI budget conversation,
Mm,
because AI is prevalent there, and there's ways that cameras and doors can become smarter, give you more data, and that's going to solve a lot of efficiencies for you as well, and create less problems. There's so many things that don't require a person to sit behind a computer to monitor video feeds anymore. AI can do that. It can talk to them and
Yeah,
alert them and things like that. So a piece of advice would be just to start talking about AI in regards to physical security whenever you have those
I like
conversations
that.
internally.
And bring it up early in the conversation. There's a lot
Right.
of opportunity and options right now. Oh, I like that. That's a great thought. Yeah. All right, team. Any other remaining tips or thoughts? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate the stories, the insights, and just thanks for sharing your time. And if anybody has any remaining questions, we'll be sending a follow-up email later today, and the guys are available to answer questions. So please do reply to that email. All right. Thanks all. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.